Welcome everybody to this lesson, CSS website layout. So the layout is how the page or your web page is designed to look, where you place your content, your navigation, everything about the website, how you structure it and how you place stuff within your page. That is the layout. So the things that we are going to be looking at is your headers, your menus, your content, and your footer. So where do you place all of these things? And there are tons of different layout styles and designs that you can choose from. However, this structure is the most common. So you're going to have your header at the top, followed by your navigation menu, and you're going to have your content in the middle. And then below it, you're going to have your footer. So we're going to take a look at how to do these kind of layouts. So see you in the code section. So this is our HTML. Right now, there is nothing. It doesn't do anything. The body is empty. Everything is empty. If I refresh this, you only see the title, which is layout for our website, and that's all. So the first thing we are going to do is to create a header, right? And a header, like I said, is usually located at the top of your page, right? And it sometimes will contain a logo and all that. So let's just create the section for the header. So in your body, we are going to create a div, right? And the div is going to contain, I'm just going to first style this div by giving it a class name called header, right? And right now, I just want to put, let's put an H1 so it has some content and put header section, header section. Okay, good. So if I just refresh this, you see header section. But how do we style it? Right. So in my style, which is here, I'm going to have, first I'm going to create my body so I can remove all the margins. I can set the margin to 0, right? And then I can now style my header. I'm going to call my class dot header, and then first I'm going to assign a background color so we can see something. Background color. And then what color do I want? I always like the light gray. So F1, F1, F1. So when I refresh it now, you see the header. Good. So that's the first thing that we did. Now I want to add padding to this div so that it's inside. So I'm going to add a padding. I'm going to set this to 18 pixels. Okay. So now, okay, maybe 20. I'm going to pad this 20 pixels. You can see it's not centered. So I can just say text align center. Okay. So now we have it centered. So this is my my header. It's simple and takes up the entire top section. And so you can see. Okay, good. The next one that we are going to be doing is your navigation bar, right? So this div is for the header. I'm going to create another div for your nav. So div, I'm going to create a navigation bar and I'm going to give this a class name. And because it's the top navigation bar, I'm going to give it top nav. Good. And then in this navigation div, I'm going to have my links, my anchors, anchor tags, href, and then hash because it's going nowhere just for test. So I'm going to have my link one, link one, right? So if I can just copy and replicate, that will be extremely fast. I'm going to have three links, link two and link three. Okay, so that's going to be my top nav. And so now, if I just refresh this, you can see there, but now we have to style this div. Good. So I'm going to come here. First thing we have to do is I want everything to have the border box style. So first, I'm going to just say, and then I'm going to say box sizing, border box. Okay. So let's just refresh. Nothing has changed. Good. So now let's style our top nav. So I'm going to come down here and then top nav. And I'm going to create a navigation, right? So like we did in the navigation section of our course, we're just going to say overflow. I'm going to set this to hidden. And then I'm going to have a background color. And I'm going to set this to, okay. So now when I refresh this, we have this, right? The blue and black doesn't work, and we are going to fix that. And the way we fix it is we have to select it, top nav, and then space, and then the anchor. Okay, and so now we want to float this left, and then we want to display block so we can uh, do some more stuff to this. So I'm going to put a display. I'm going to set it to block. And so now if I just refresh it, nothing has changed yet. Good. But now we can now work on the padding and stuff because now we have changed it to block. So color, because the color is not looking too good. So I'm going to do hash F2, F2, F2. Looks somewhat whitish. Good. So the color is now good. I'm going to align the text to the center. So text align, center, right? And when I refresh this, it still looks the same, but it's aligned. Good. And then I can now add the padding. And what kind of padding would do? 15 pixels by 17 pixels. Okay. So when I refresh this, you can now see the pattern in there. Good. And there's still underlined in here, and I do not want that, so I need to remove the text decoration, set it to none. Okay, good. And now, but when I hover over this, I don't see any changes, and I want to be able to see that. So now, let's do that. So dot top nav, A, but now pseudo class, hover, and background color. I'm going to set that to DDD. Good. And then I want the color of the text to change. I want to set that to black. So it still has the black on white effect. Okay, so now when I refresh this and I hover over it, you see it's looking nice. Okay, so that is good. That looks good. So now for the content, let's create the content, right? So I'm gonna create right here a div. In this div, I'm gonna call this div, this class. I'm gonna set this to row, right? And so I'm looking at having a two column uh content, right? So column one, column two having two different content. So let's try and do that. So in this div called row, I'm gonna create my first column. It's also gonna be a div, right? And I'm gonna call the class name here class equal to column, right? So what content should I have here? I'm just gonna put an h2 and say column, and then I'm just gonna put in a p, which is gonna contain a lorem content. Okay, good. So this is gonna be my first. Maybe I should just yep. And then I'm gonna create my second column, and because it's gonna be the same thing, maybe I can just copy it, right? And then still lorem. Okay, so we are good. This is a two column content, right? So let's go ahead and style this. Okay, the first thing that I want to do is to work on the column, right? So I'm going to first select it, dot column, column, and then I'm going to say I want it to float left. All right, so it's going to float left of its content, or if it's a container, right? Sorry. So now I'm going to say width, because this is going to be two column content styling, I need to make it about 50%, right? So it takes 50% of the content. If I wanted three, I would have been using about 33%, right? So now, and then I need to add some padding to this, say 20 pixels. Okay, so just this, I just want to refresh this, and you can see that we have the two column, right? And it's virtually 50% apart, and then we have some padding in there. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is uh, I want to display this as a table, but first, yep. So after this, I want to clear the floating, right? So I said it float left, but I want to clear the floating after this. So I'm gonna set the row, which is the class. So after this, so all this is inside a container called the row class, right? So this div right here is what these two columns is contained in, right? So I am going to use this class row and say dot row, which selects that class, and then I'm going to use a pseudo class called after. So after this class, and then now I'm going to say two things: content, content, and then I'm going to say the display on this should be table, And then finally, I want to clear the float. Okay, and we already talked about all of these things in our preceding lessons, so this shouldn't be new. Good. So when I just refresh it, yep, you don't see anything physically, but that is what it's doing. Good. So now, finally, what I want to do is I want to make this responsive, create a responsive layout on this, meaning that uh, I want to be able to stack the contents on top of each other when the screen reduces in size, right? Uh, so I'm going to use our responsive layout technique that we learned in that lesson. So I'm going to say add media, say screen, and max width. So the max width now, th. I'm going to set that to 600 pixels. And now I'm going to set the dot column. The width on that should be 100%. Okay, so that's it. So this works. This is a two column. So this works. If I refresh it, nothing changes, but this is what it looks like. Okay. If I wanted to make this three column, and maybe let me just do it, I can just copy this down. So now I have my three column, and then I have to change this. But if I just refresh this, you're gonna see this is gonna drop down, and that's not what we want. So I have to make this with 100% divided by 3, which is 33.333. Okay, so now when I refresh this, you can see them side by side like that. Good. And the columns don't have to always be equal width, right? You can make them different width if you want, right? You just have to style it differently, right? So for example, if I wanted this, I have to call it differently. So maybe I can call this column left, column middle, and then column right, right? And then I have to style them differently. So I have to be able to call each of these uh, columns, right? So I already have my column set to float, and then I have to remove this width so that it doesn't affect it. And so I can now call dot column, right, dot left. And so now with the dot column dot left, I can set the width to maybe 20%, right? And then I can just copy and paste. Okay, so now column dot middle might be having about, let's say, 60%, right? Oops, that's column dot left. This is 60, and column dot right should have another 20%, right? So now when I refresh this, you can see the difference in columns. So yes, you can use any number of design techniques that you want to get that in place. Finally, we can create our footer. So I'm gonna come down here. Oops, what's happening? And then create my footer. So I'm gonna create my div. I'm gonna call this class footer, right? And then I'm gonna have a p tag right here. Just saying footer. Okay, good. So now let's style this, right? So I'm just gonna style, go back to my top content, and then we are going to style our footer right here. So that footer, and then I want the background color to be a little different. So hash F2, F3, F4. I don't know what that color is gonna look like, but I just choose something from here. Okay, and then I'm gonna add padding to this, 12 pixels, and I'm gonna add text align, center. Okay, so that is it. That's all we need. And when I refresh this, you can see the footer here. Good. There's a lot you can do, but I'm just going to stop here. We've passed the 20-minute mark, and I don't want to bore you too much. But yeah, this just gives you an example of how you can style your page, manage things around, put things where you want them, and kind of make it look neat and nice. So thank you, and see you in the next lesson. Bye.